Be careful. You might learn something.
Let's go.
You are now tuned in to the Factual Opinions Podcast with your hosts. I am Pharaoh. Straight facts.
Okay.
Welcome back, world. This is Factual Opinions Podcast, Season 5, Episode 10. We're calling this one Survival Tactics for a number of reasons. Me and Big John can definitely relate to that right now. It's your gracious and humble host. I am Pharaoh, checking in with the Brown Bruce Wayne, Big John.
Yes, sir.
And the original brain thrust behind the Factual Opinions Podcast brand, no other than Kurt McGirt, a.k.a. Kurt Cortez, in the house with his cowboy hat.
Let's go.
We will be without Will West, the best Nate today. Nate is on his way for his vacation in Houston, Texas. So shout out to Nate.
Brother Nate. You know, he's getting ready for his nuptials.
Yes. Him and Miss Amber rapidly approaching August and the super wedding in tow. So Nate is going to go to Houston and have his summer vacation. Wish him all the best and safe travels. Come back home safe. Well, gentlemen, a lot to talk about, but I do want to start off the program by acknowledging the passing of Colts owner Mr. Jim Irsay a couple days ago, passed away at age 65. The NFL lost one of the good owners. Mr. Irsay, as we all are with human beings, was not without fault. He had a little addiction at times to that bottle, like his pops did, the original Mr. Irsay, who moved the Colts from Baltimore to Indianapolis. But Mr. Irsay was a giving man. He gave away tickets a lot, money that we'll never even know or have documented on our end as regular fans or citizens, but was a supporter of people in the Indianapolis community, minority supporter as far as opportunities and things behind the scenes. Was the one that obviously brought in Tony Dungy in 2002 and stuck with him when the Colts were not originally able to climb that mountain until they did get their first Super Bowl title in Indianapolis in what was that, 06, 07 season?
I think it was 05, 06, one of them.
But I know it was 06 or 07 season that he was finally able to bring one home for Indianapolis. So shout out to the Irsay family, Indianapolis community. There have been a number of tributes for former Colts players. Peyton Manning has spoke on it, Pat McAfee, other people. So I did want to acknowledge one of the good owners and good people that this game just lost.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So moving on, Kurt already decided to throw darts at me because, as you see, I'm still repping my New York Knicks.
He wasn't throwing darts, man.
It was a tough one last night in the Garden and the finality of Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. How my beloved New York Knicks lost a 9-point lead with a minute left in the game, I'll never understand. Well, that's a good segue, that choke gesture, because I've seen that before, actually. And Tyrese Halliburton is the new Reggie Miller, apparently. I saw Reggie score 8 points in 10 seconds and another insurmountable lead, but that's exactly what happened last night. So let's go on and get into it. The Garden was packed, was rocking. Celebrity Row was there as usual. The Ben Stillers, the Fat Joes, the Tracy Morgans. Of course, Spike courtside because I've seen the Tracy Morgans. Of course, Spike.
What
Yeah, Kurt's got his phone doing the. But it wasn't enough in Game 1. The Pacers stormed back. Tyrese Halliburton, of course, hit what we thought was a game-winning three-pointer at the end. Ball couldn't have bounced crazier. Went up in the air, came down in the basket, wound up being a 2. Took it to overtime, where former Nick Obi Toppin decided to go nuts and put the nail in the coffin. So, guys, what was your interpretation of game one? And do you think, based on the way it ended, that this is something that my Knicks can come back from?
I mean, this game, of course, they can come back from it. They're gonna have to step down and rearrange and make adjustments. But as we all know, whether what sport we talk about, whether football, boxing style makes fights, and the Pacers are very athletic, and it's gonna show. Was it? I know that everybody be getting on Cat now. Cat, I mean, he got somebody down low in Miles Turner that's a little bit more athletic, a little bit more slender. He got to keep up with him. I don't know. Halliburton playing out of his mind. You know, we got to see what Bronson is doing. I know he probably be nicked up a little bit because of the way he plays. You know, he got that, I'm going to run through the wall kind of game. So we're going to see.
Brother Kurt?
Man, first and foremost, that was a great game last night. It's probably been my favorite game that I watched this year in the playoffs. I believe the Knicks can get back from it. And as you said earlier, man, I wasn't sending any shots, man, because believe it or not, whoever wins, out of the East this year is who I'm going to be cheering for in the finals. I like both teams. I do think this is going to be a 7-game series. It's going to be hot and cold for both teams. This is going to be a great series. This is probably going to be better than the finals, in my opinion, depending on who it is. But this is the matchup.
Yeah, I'm definitely, and I might be proven wrong by the time we get to the NBA finals, because I know people like Charles Barkley have picked the Thunder, all year to win, and we'll get to that series in the Western Conference finals. But I do personally think whoever comes out of the East may end up winning the actual series, and I still believe, without as much bias as possible, but I mean, I can't say that. You see what it is. I still do believe my Knicks will rebound. This is going to be a long series. This is definitely going to be a 6 or 7 game series, regardless of who wins the actual series. And it's like Rick Fox always used to say, party's just getting started. It's not really a series until somebody wins on somebody else's court. Well, that happened in game one. And, it's the Knicks' turn to, rebound and make this a series. So I'm actually tagging everybody right now, since Brother Nate usually takes care of that for me. So another question I had with this, when I'm looking at it, the announcers talked about it several times during the course of the game yesterday. The difference might end up being is the fact of how deep the Indiana Pacers are. They have 10, 11 man, rotation at this point at the very least. They're playing more than that, really. But I'm just talking about the guys that, will definitely play on a nightly basis, to where, and this has been, criticism of Thibs everywhere, he's been, he's grinding out 6, 7 man rotation. You know who's going to play. They don't go really deep in the Knicks bench. The most valuable player off the bench for us is Mitchell Robinson, who does make a huge impact when he's out there, both offensively and defensively. But we know what the problem is with him. He's 30% free throw shooter.
Right.
So as much value as he brings, he's also, a liability. Yeah, out there. So that might be something that, you want to keep your eye on for sure, is the depth of Indianapolis might end up being the difference, unfortunately. So
and that's what gets you in the playoffs, is the depth, is the bench, because a lot of teams who are top heavy can't last the game, and this is a 7-game series. You got to have somebody else step up. So that's what kind of happened with the Thunder and Denver. Denver didn't have a deeper team as the Thunder, and they ran. Even though they had the boy and Jokic, they fell short because of that. So hey,
absolutely. Well, like you said, Big John, it is just game one, and Right now, the Pacers have stolen home court advantage, so it's going to be imperative for the Knicks not to fall into an 0-2 hole and to take care of business in Game 2 and make sure at the very least it's even going back to Indianapolis because they're going to be ready in Indy. One funny thing about that, though, I saw Charles Barkley make a plea to Indiana's, home crowd and everything. He wants Adam Silver to reconsider letting Tyrese Halliburton's father attend games. It says the ban should not be indefinite.
It should. I feel like it shouldn't be, but you gotta learn, as LeBron once said to his mom, you gotta learn how to sit your behind down. Yeah, I don't think it should be like, especially you know what TV that would make for him to be in the garden with Spike. But people go want to see that, man. Now, still don't embarrass your son, but nevertheless, enjoy the game. Enjoy your son, man.
Well, Barkley and Draymond had interesting takes on that last night, where they said that even if he was to be allowed to attend games again, he wouldn't try that mess in the garden, and if he did,
he'd get checked quick, fast, in the hurry.
They'd be carrying him out in New York. So
yeah, for sure.
I think they proved their point already too at this. I mean, if he still go out there and acting a fool, then he deserves an indefinite ban. But I think their point is proved.
Yeah,
kind of remind me of Ja Morant's father.
Yeah, and his son. His son is proving a point. Y'all voted me the most overrated player, and I'm here proving y'all wrong. So let him do what he do. Let him enjoy his son, man.
Well, I don't want him to do what he does, but so much against my beloved. But yeah, I get. I do think he should be allowed back at some point. At least, like Charles said, at the very least, the home games in Indianapolis, just prove that he can act right, going forward, and then go from there. Western Conference Finals. OKC. I won't say stole game one. They actually routed game one. Wasn't even close against Minnesota Timberwolves. Our beloved friend Travaris Bass, who I just tagged, said that he had picked Minnesota to win the title.
He always picking Minnesota.
I wanted to throw a jab at him because I'm like, "Oh, you a Minnesota fan again, like you were when we were in high school?" But
just say I'm a Kevin Garnett fan and leave it at that.
Well, we know he's a Giannis fan, and I'll get to that in a little bit about
or whoever's winning at the time, probably.
Yeah, see, I wasn't gonna say that. He said that though. TV.
Well, Minnesota wasn't never winning. They were just making it to the playoffs at the time. They wasn't winning nothing.
Well, he was just a T-Mac and KG fan. We know that. Now he's a Giannis fan, and like I said, I'll segue to that in a little bit as far as what we think about his future prospects and where he's going to be playing basketball at, because that will affect TV and a lot of other people's fandom when he's no longer in Milwaukee. But speaking of the Western Conference Finals, you got Minnesota, who's been playing, out of their mind with Ant-Man, and former Knick Julius Randle, who's part of that big trade for Karl Anthony Towns. They have a lot of other pieces too, though. Naz Reid and old man Mike Conley still out there from Rudy Gobert. But they took it on the chin in game one, certainly.
DiVincenzo, but the crazy part about it is they was actually playing better in the first half. They just collapsed. Like Randall was going off. Like he had like 18 to 20 in like the first half.
Well, that's what a good defensive team can do, though. They can, lock in and change the dynamic of the game, take advantage of the energy from the home crowd, and I think that's what OKC did for sure in game one in the second half.
Yeah, SGA wasn't really making shots in the first half. He came alive in the second half. He wasn't really making shots in the first half.
And shout out to SGA for winning NBA MVP. I honestly thought he should have won last year when they gave it to the dad bod god again. And
they gave it to Bobby Hill again.
Yeah. and the Joker. What do we think about the Western Conference? Is it another scenario where what we said about the Eastern Conference, where hey, it's just game one, don't
It's
overreact?
it's just game one. I still think the Thunder are going to beat them, but Ant-Man ain't going. He's going to show up. He only took 13 shots last game. He tweaked his ankle on that freak play. He's going to be fine. They're gonna figure it out. Even if, I don't think they're gonna win the series, because I don't think they got enough depth for OKC, even though they do have a lot of decent people. Right now, SGA playing out of his mind. The tall kid number 7, I forgot his name. He's playing good. The other big man they got is getting dunks, getting easy layups. They playing together right now. I don't see the Timberwolves beating them, but we know Ant-Man ain't going. He's gonna get a game or 2, maybe 3.
Kurt, what do you think? Is this a long series or short series, regardless of who wins?
This is gonna be a long series too. Nas Reed and those other role players aren't going to shoot terrible every game, because that's what this series is going to be about. It's going to be about the role players more than the star players. We know what SGA going to do. We know what Ant-Man is going to do. It's going to be about them role players and which team you think has better role players. And I think both are kind of equal. So I see this being a really good series, just like on the East Coast.
So right now, with game one in the books for both series, if you guys had to pick who is going to represent each conference in the NBA Finals.
Okay. I feel like it's going to be OKC in New York, but I would rather see, honestly, I would rather see a New York, Minnesota NBA Finals, but it's going to be OKC. OKC's going to make it. Now, y'all got to come out and play. I feel like y'all will beat them. Y'all will beat Indy, but Indy playing out of their mind right now, but I feel like it's going to be OKC in New York.
I believe it's going to be New York and Minnesota. I think New York has a better chance at beating Minnesota than they do OKC. I don't really think they want to see them OKC boys right now, because that's where that depth is going to come into play. Thibodeau plays 6 people, 7 man rotation, and OKC they got people. They got people to come off the bench, and they have, in my opinion, really good role players. So, I think it's going to be New York and Minnesota. And for New York's sake, I think they would rather see Minnesota. Sorry, Indy, but they just don't have the experience and grit that I think New York has.
I mean, this is just a question. I know nobody really want to see him right now, but who is New York going to put on Ant-Man?
From who?
On Anthony Edwards.
I mean, the assignment's definitely going to go to OG Anunoby to guard him more than likely.
You think he can?
I'm saying that's who the assignment is going to go.
He's going to
he's not going to stop him, but can he slow him down a little bit?
And I think Anthony Edwards will take the assignment to guard that point guard in New York, Jalen Brunson, which will be the difference maker. But I don't know. I just like
Brunson burner. I mean, that would probably be his competitive nature would take over, and that's who I'm sure Ant-Man would want to guard. I think maybe the Minnesota coach may have to guard, against his pride taking over, because that would take a lot out of Ant-Man energy-wise to have to score on one end and also guard Jalen Brunson on the other end. I'm not saying he can't do it, but ideally I wouldn't want Ant-Man doing that, just if it was me.
Key situations.
Yeah, I mean, for stretches, I just mean, for the entire length of the game, no.
No, of course not.
And if that does happen, the microscope is going to be on Cat tremendously. If he don't come out and play, it's going to be bad.
That's where I think New York is going to struggle, because he ain't it to me.
No, I'm still a big Cat fan, and what I would say to that is
he's a cat.
He has the ability to take Rudy Gobert out of the paint. and unclog that middle where he wants to stay and just be that rim protector and shot blocker. He would actually have to come out on the perimeter and guard a little bit, which would open things up for some of
I
his
mean,
teammates.
you don't think Gobert would guard Robinson?
That would almost be easier for Gobert though, because Mitchell Robinson's not playing on the perimeter.
That's what I'm saying.
So do you put Randall on Cat?
I would.
And that also would mean Cat would have to play defense against Randall.
Yeah, I mean that's gonna be must see TV. Those two going at one
Especially
another.
since they were traded for each other. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
But
See, and both of those teams are a little bit old school, and the fact that they're one of the only teams that you'll see play that double big man lineup in the post with Randall and Gobert, and of course with Cat and Mitchell Robinson. I like that lineup, and I'm sure Cat does too, because we all know he sometimes wants to play like he's a guard or a small forward or something, like that. So he's able to float out in the perimeter a little bit more when Mitchell Robinson's down there just collecting offensive rebounds, for the squad. So for me to go ahead and pick, yes, I would still like to and still expect to see a New York, Minnesota um, NBA Finals. We got TB in the house. TV said that's good job back at it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Appreciate you tuning in, brother TB. We were making fun of you a little bit earlier, man. I thought you were gonna go back to being a Minnesota Timberwolves fan by some of your comments, man.
or Boston Celtic, or I don't know.
I don't think it would happen.
Milwaukee
Man,
Bucks.
Just by name recognition, man. Just having an OKC Indiana Finals, that's gonna be weird. And I'm not saying they both are very talented teams. They're young and they can play, and they probably will have a good finals. But it's just like, will people really tune in to see that?
Well, people in Indianapolis and Minnesota, or Indianapolis and OKC would. I remember I was joking with Jeff Lawrence about that. He had asked last Sunday. He didn't know that Game 7 had already taken place in the semifinal series, and because it happened at 3:30 in the afternoon. And he's like, "Wow, man!" He was like, "That's kind of early." And I'm like, not to be funny, I'm like, would it really have made a difference if they put that in prime time with Denver and OKC? Yes, they have fans nationally, but let's be honest about it. Most of their fan bases come from their regions and where they're located at. So I can see the NBA like, let's go ahead and, get that one over. So I want to stick with basketball a little bit and get into subplot that caused several ripple effects in what is now known as I guess you could say, biggest rivalry in the WNBA. They carried over from college. The Chicago Sky played the Indiana Fever, which means Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese resumed their rivalry. Sparks flew a little bit. There was an altercation towards the end of the game where Caitlin Clark swatted, at a ball, and Angel Reese, fell and hit the ground and kind of got up like she was going after Caitlin. Now, I'm laughing because, one, I think it's good for the game that they have, this rivalry. And when I make this comparison, I'm not saying that either one is necessarily the same caliber. I'm just saying basketball player, although both young ladies are great. I want to highlight that. But the impact that they're having is similar to the Magic Johnson, Larry Bird impact, where they say Magic and Larry save the NBA. Not that there wasn't good ball being played in the WNBA. We know that. But let's be honest. Like, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese carrying over their rivalry from college into the WNBA has been good for the WNBA. Like, it's brought viewership up. It's got a whole nother crop of, audience and people paying attention. And they don't like each other. Now, they can say whatever they want, try and downplay it on the mic or whatever. I think in front of cameras, I think it's obvious that they don't like each other at this point. And what I wish would happen is it would just be about basketball. I wish, and this is never going to happen, but I wish people would quit falling for the low hanging fruit in the Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark scenario, because we know what that is. And it's cheap tribalism, and it just plays out that way because of society. It should really focus on their basketball rivalry and how good of players both young ladies are. But what does it more often than not come out to be, Kurt? That's why you smiling over there, because you know what it's about. What unfortunately happens with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark is it turns into a race thing, and it did with Magic and Larry also, until both people, kind of acknowledged that they actually did love each other towards the end of their careers, and there was that mutual respect. I'm hoping that Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese get to that point where they have a mutual respect for one another. I mean, I'm sure they probably do as basketball players, but again, it's obvious they don't like each other. And what happens is we have a certain segment sides with Caitlin Clark because of her race, and we have a certain segment that sides with Angel Reese because of her race. What I want to get out and open, and I'll say and open the door for you all, I think part of the issue that some people don't want to admit, and I'm just being honest, although both are great basketball players, some don't want to admit that Caitlin Clark is a better basketball player than Angel Reese.
Because she is, but they play two different positions and they do totally different things. So comparing, like I said, when we were talking earlier, that's like comparing, even though they are teammates, and I know the person I named does a little bit more, and I'm not trying to downplay his game, but that's like comparing Steph Curry to Draymond Green. They do two different things. They are two different players. They are on the team for two different reasons. So, yes, one statistically may be better because she's better, but also the position she plays, she always has the ball in her hand. She can shoot. She can do so many different things. And Angel Reese is a post player. She gets rebounds. She gets pushback. She's a down low, post type player. They do two different things. So trying to compare their game is, I can't even say apples and oranges. It's like apples and grapes. It's not even the same. It's not even close. So it's like it's not the same. So yes, do I feel like overall Caitlin Clark is the better basketball player? Yes, she is. But it's also, like you said, it's low hanging fruit. It's the tension on both sides, and as much attention as Caitlin Clark is getting, as she deserves. She's brought a lot of attention to the league, but Angel Reese was the one that got the ring in college. Now let's see what they're gonna do in the league. So it's like, and I understand where Angel Reese is coming from. Let me have my career without keep bringing her up. But Reese needs to do a better job of blocking that when they ask her questions, because they will ask her questions about Caitlin Clark, and they're not even playing each other. They'll be playing two different teams, and they'll ask her a question. If I was,
you don't think they did that to Magic and Larry?
Oh, for sure, they did. But if I was her, I don't want to talk about her. I would be just like Marshawn Lynch. Next question.
Well, we also talked about this, and then I'm gonna get Kurt in here. We talked about this off the record, Big John. Angel has to do a better job at not feeding into this crap and giving them, farther, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
If you don't want to talk about her, then let's stop doing things, particularly when. And I'm not blaming Angel or more than Caitlin or anything, but I just know that she's been willing to speak about it more publicly than Caitlin has about it. Caitlin, we may know how she feels, because she obviously wouldn't do things like she did, like, swatting at the ball and a little extra, stuff. But I feel like even with Angel being baited, which in certain instances she is, you're right, Big John, she falls victim to it and goes along with it.
Right.
Whatever just happened to good old basketball, yo. Like, to all parties involved, it is a rivalry. Angel Reese is feeding into the narrative that, this bad guy, she's feeding into that by some of the things that she has done on the court, which is cool. It's a part of the sport. I hate, honestly, that everything centered around them is about race, just like it was Magic and Bird back in the day. Because at the end of the day, it's really about two great players that don't like each other. They don't like each other. It's you can see it. It's visible. Like when they play each other, it's going to be aggressive because guess what? Basketball is an aggressive sport. You know, Caitlin Clark, that foul. Oh my goodness, that was so minute to me. I'm like, for her to react, for Angel to react that way, it's cool. Nothing wrong with that. It's basketball. You can hype your teammates by reacting that way, but you have to take what comes with it. You know, when you're the bad guy, when you're the enforcer on your team, and you're doing your players like that, you're doing tactics like that. You got to take what comes with it. It's part of being a professional basketball player. It's basketball. It's part of the sport. Everybody needs to simmer down.
Of course, and like me and Al talked about it off the record, I agree with everything you just said. It's basketball. It's okay to have passion and do what you do. It's okay to have some dust ups. It's a part of the game. Alex, you love the Knicks. How many times did the Knicks fight the Heat, or they fought the Pacers, or they fought whatever? It's okay to do that. But like you said, Kurt, when you are that enforcer, you want to play the bad guy role. You want to be a villain. You can't be upset when people paint you as that, but you accept that role. Now, do I like some of the stuff Angel Reese does? No. Do I like some of the stuff Caitlin Clark does? No. But like you said, it's basketball. Be competitive, be aggressive, but keep it basketball.
You know, and the other part is, and I hate to bring this up because I don't want it to have any fodder or people to play into that narrative, but you know, if it's true, it's true. I do think people react differently because two individuals were speaking about our ladies.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have these same discussions when, like you said back in the day, you know, Alonzo Mourning is trying to fight everything walking in blue and orange, and Jeff Van Gundy's hanging on his leg, and you know,
that's still hilarious.
The dust ups between the Knicks and Pacers. You know, I could go on and on about that happened in the 90s and early, you know, 2000s, or just the bravado that certain male athletes have. I heard people talk about, they say, well, you know, if Angel Reese points to her ring finger, or Caitlin Clark does a certain gesture, it's looked at differently than if Joe Burrow or, you know, somebody else were to do it that's a male athlete. You know, I won't totally dismiss that. I believe there's still, you know, some of that, you know, there. And it's like Kurt said, you know, I wish people would just keep it about basketball, let these ladies play, enjoy the rivalry for what it is, and the fact that they don't like each other, and it's going to be intense when they play one another. I mean, they have teammates that have gotten involved with this that don't like. I can't remember the young lady's name that plays on Angel Reese's team. Man, and I feel bad that I forgot her name. But she made a comment last year. She was going at Caitlin Clark. She was saying, well, what does she do besides shooting 3-pointers?
That's hate.
That was the girl that gave her that little shove or whatever.
Yeah, we got to get her name though. Like,
yeah,
I'm looking that up right now
because that's hate. But guess what?
I know why she said. I know why she was saying that though, because she herself, you know, was one of them that has been putting in work, you know, in the league, and she's looking at it like, well, why are you all just paying attention now that these, you know, rookies are here? Like, there have been people like me that have been putting in work in the league. So that
I don't understand why she said it, because that's hate. You're not gonna say the same thing to Steph Curry. All he do is shoot threes, because we all know that's not. Caitlin Curry, they get assists.
You are right. It is hate, but maybe that particular player shouldn't have said it. Maybe if if Asia Wilson would have said it, which she probably never will say it like that. But maybe if she said it or something similar to it, maybe it would have held a little bit more weight, because she is right now the best player in the WNBA. Maybe if she would have said it, or Stewie or somebody like that would have said it, maybe it would have held a little bit more weight. But they have made comments, but not like that. But maybe if somebody said it differently and it was somebody else who actually, is one of the top 4 or 5 players in the WNBA, maybe it'll hold the weight. But coming from her, it does sound like hate.
You know what I would tell them to do? Start a rivalry. Because half the reason that we still even, I mean, of course, it's good basketball being played. But why this is, you hear about more the rivalry, the drama in the league than you actually hear about the league.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and that was one thing I wanted to bring up. So it was Kennedy Carter that said it. Now, and I understand what you're saying, Big John, but it's not like she was chopped liver, either. Back in 2020, she was the 4th overall pick in the WNBA,
for sure.
draft.
For
so
sure.
she put in work too.
I'm just saying if one of the big dogs would have said it, it probably would have held a little bit more weight. I'm not saying she's not. I mean, anybody that makes it to that level of any sport is phenomenal. I'm not saying that somebody is greater than the other. Even the 6th or 7th man on the bench is great because you made it, and there's a whole bunch of people that didn't.
And said Kennedy Carter is a good player, but not a great player. Well, but that's what I'm saying though. It's not like she was just some bench warmer or 6th woman of the year coming off the bench. And also said, guys, let's be real. Caitlin Clark is a superstar. Angel Reese is a good player that thinks she's better than what she is. Well,
hey, never mind.
Well, Will said that before. Will Johnson, shout out to the Punk coach.
They're going to say you don't like black women when you make comments like that.
Well, first of all, he said more than that. He actually called Angel Reese Draymond Green, but
he should have been here to chime in. He didn't want to respond to my text message.
And that's no shot at Draymond Green. He has several championships. He will be a Hall of Famer. He's been Defensive Player of the Year.
Charles Barkley say he out there getting them triple singles.
He's also multiple time Defensive Player of the Year. And Chuck, he has
single digit points, single digit rebounds.
He has 4 things Chuck won't never have.
Okay, and that is a great segue because you said that, and me and Jeff were talking about this too. I'm glad that number one, Chuck and Draymond are actually cool now because they spent many years not being. But people told them if they got together, they would like each other. But that's all fine. What you said about Draymond, I want to finish this. That's fine. What you said about Draymond, and nobody's taking away those 4 rings, that he did. But let me tell you something. He will never be Charles Barkley.
And he won't.
Period. Point blank. You say that about the rings, but Charles Barkley, he is not.
He won't. He won't. No, he will never be Charles. He will never be Charles at all. Charles is one of the top 75 players of all time. He will never be Charles.
Draymond Green wouldn't be in the league if he wasn't with Golden State, in my opinion.
I'm not going to say he wouldn't be in the league because he would.
He wouldn't have 4 of these.
No, he wouldn't. Would he be who he is now?
Absolutely not.
He would probably be sorry, but he would probably be somewhere in Detroit or Charlotte dying.
Channing Frye.
He would be Channing Frye.
PJ Tucker. That's what he would be.
PJ Tucker can shoot.
So what's Forrest Grant's nephew's name?
What's Giannis's brother's name?
I ain't gonna disrespect him that much now. Now the man has a basketball IQ. He does things that don't get seen on the scoreboard. And I'm sorry y'all got me taken up for this dude because I don't like him. But he has a basketball IQ. He's a great player, man. But
he's a good player.
He wouldn't be the Draymond he is now if he didn't come through that system. No.
And that's fine. And I agree. And I think that Draymond is, a very good basketball player, and he's going to go down in history as one of the more smarter players, like you said, and defensive-oriented guys. Dennis Rodman, he is not, but,
and you correct. I'm sorry, Al. And you corrected me and said he's good. No, he's great. You don't win multiple defensive player of the years and not be great. He's great. Now,
but he called himself the greatest defensive player of all time. And
no, he's not.
I don't even think he's top 15 defensive player all time, in my opinion. And that's regardless of position, but he is a good player. And I do respect what Draymond does on the court because, like you said, a lot of it is the dirty work and stuff that we grew up watching and respecting guys like Charles Oakley and them that went out there and did that. And there was a role for that. And I think he does have a little bit more of a skill set than even some of those players because Draymond does come down and facilitate on offense, sometimes and things like that. So I'll give him that.
And it's some games where he did give you 20, 22. Now, he don't do it on a consistent basis, but he don't just not do it. So
we got brother Tony in the house. Draymond is definitely top 15 on the defensive side of the ball. Ain't too many guys who truly guard 1 through 5. Well, I don't believe that he can do that, especially not consistently at this point in his career. Because when you say guard 1 through 5, there are certain guys that come to mind, mainly Dennis Rodman, and I'm sorry, I don't. As great as Draymond is, I don't hold him in the same regard as a Dennis Rodman or Sidney Moncrief or Gary Payton, on the defensive end. I just don't. That's just me. But is he right there in that next tier after them to me? Yeah. It's just a different era. It's a different era. Like there was no thing as a freedom of movement and all this other stuff that, changes the game, right now. So being a help defender versus a straight on ball defender is a different thing, also, or a rotation guy. Draymond is very smart at, team rotation and making sure other guys are in the right spots as well as, himself and, picking up guys on switches and stuff, which is all important. I'm not taking away from that, but like as a singular, I'm going to lock you down and take you out of the game, type guy. I don't know that I've really seen him do that to any particular elite post player, that he's, guarded, took him out of a game. Hell, even Dwight Howard, is one of the only people that I've seen, shut down, the dad by, God for any length of time. Like I said, there are definitely guys that flash more on the defensive end, particularly as I'm going to lock you down 1-on-1 type player before I would think Draymond Green and pop into my head.
We're giving Draymond Green too much airtime for his lack of skill. I'm sorry, I don't. He's one of the most overrated people. He's nice, he's smart and all of that, but.
Aunt said she's a great rebounder. People don't come to see great rebound. Not unless it's, again, that guy I keep mentioning, Dennis Rodman, was one of the only people that people would come to the game to specifically watch rebound. And also the other guy we just mentioned, the round mound of rebound, although he did much more than that. And it was very evident when you watched him play because Charles was one of the first power forwards that was taking the ball, in the end, handling and yamming that thing. And he had a jumper on top of it. Draymond's is hit or miss, and it's mainly created off what Chuck said. He said, man, you sitting there acting like you David Ruffin, man. Like they didn't come to see you. They came to see Steph and back in the day, Clay also.
Yeah.
People forget how great a defender Tayshaun Prince was. Yeah, I mean, but again, and that's why I'm making that distinction.
He got that chase down.
And an on-ball defender, too, that would lock you up in the half court, setting one-on-one. And yes, he did get that epic chase down on Reggie Miller in the Eastern Conference Finals back in, I believe that was 2004 when he did that. But, Indiana missed the opportunity to win the championship that year with the Malice in the Palace. That was their year. Because people forget part of the whole reason that fiasco went down was because of the blowout that the Pacers had just put on that Pistons team that we were talking about. I mean, that was a very deep team with Jamal Tinsley and Reggie Miller, as he even admitted, didn't have his superpowers at that point, but almost didn't need him with a young Steven Jackson and, Jermaine O'Neal and Ron
I was a
Artest.
big Jermaine O'Neal fan. That was my guy. So I actually like that team. That was a decent team.
Yeah, that was a deep team. But I agree with Kurt. We gave Draymond a little bit too much airtime. But what we were originally talking about, the Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese story, uh, does lead into the other topic that happened as a result. The RG3 versus Ryan Clark debate. Now, as I segue into that, let me get my man Tez in here. He said, I cannot believe that you got on a Knicks shirt, man. You was a Laker fan a couple weeks ago. No, that's false, brother Tez. I have always equally been a Los Angeles Lakers and New York Knicks fan as long as anybody has known me. And when we're talking about going back to first grade in 1994, I have equally loved the Los Angeles Lakers and New York Knicks. Some people have an issue with that. All y'all that have kids, I don't have kids. Um, I suppose you would say you don't have favorites, although I know I was my dad's favorite. You can't come out and admit that. You say you love them equally, right? Well, I love the Knicks and the Lakers equally. When they play each other, I just sit back and watch the game. I don't have a team that I root for when they play one another, but they are my favorite team, singularly. So if people don't understand it, it is what it is. So yeah. So I want to get into that uh, Ryan Clark RG3 thing because this got Rob Parker fired uh, from ESPN quite a few years back, speaking on RG3. And I see John is chomping at the bit. I know he want to go on this.
The reason why I did that, they said something similar, but they were different.
It's the same premise, though.
It is, but it ain't. The reason why I say that, and I don't want to cut you off because I know you want to explain. Rob Parker was kind of questioning RG3's blackness. I feel like Ryan Clark was not doing that. Ryan Clark was more so saying, because we all been taught this by our parents, don't embarrass us in front of company. Don't talk crazy about us in front of company. I feel like Ryan Clark was saying that. Rob Parker was questioning his blackness.
What did they say?
I'm just saying. No, I feel like that's what Ryan Clark was doing. Because if you saying what he was saying about Angel Reese being ghetto and certain words that RG3 was using.
Yeah, we'll get into that part as it relates to Angel Reese. I'm specifically honing in on what he actually said. You are sort of going on what he meant more than likely, and the purpose. I'm saying the specific verbiage that he used and why people are reacting the way they are and the overall premise of it, because he still actually came out and said verbatim, regardless of what he meant, he came out and said that you can't basically relate to the black woman's, plight or what she faces because you're married to a Caucasian woman. That's what he said. RG3's retort, and let me preface it before I get too deep into that. I like both individuals. I think they're both very articulate, well-spoken black brothers. They were successful on the field. I like what both of them have done in their media careers afterwards. But this is where sometimes Ryan Clark gets a little bit ahead of himself, and why certain people, right or wrong, fear him in that ESPN building, and why he almost didn't get a contract renewal, because he is so much of a 10 toes down, say it from the heart, wears, feelings on his sleeve type person. And this is sometimes where it can get misconstrued and taken differently than what he actually meant. My thing is with RG3, when you question a man's blackness, and all three of us can speak on this as brothers that grew up in the inner city of Cincinnati and have, our experiences growing up and growing up together, for that matter, too. It's a very slippery slope when you do that. Um, RG3 has a different experience being an army brat, moving around, a lot, but he does, come from a black household. And as he mentioned, he's raising two black daughters, at this point. To totally discredit this man's, in my opinion, existence and experience as a black man solely based on the fact that because he's married to a Caucasian woman is a little bit short-sighted. Well, not a little bit. Like, there's way more that goes into that. If it's even your right to question that or gauge, a man's blackness, which
It's not.
And I would tend to say it's not either. But I'm saying there's way more in it because there are some coons out there that are married to black women that are black.
Oh, for sure.
There are coons out there that were born and raised in a black household that still, would be by some, and again, it's personal opinion, sellouts or not sympathetic to their own, people's race or plight or whatever. So the fact that you married outside of your race does not determine whether you're black or whether you understand black culture or what we face in society right now. That's very cheap. And more importantly than anything, it has nothing to do with what the original discussion was. Like RG3 said, he said, if you want to disagree with my sports take about Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, fine. But involving my family or mentioning my wife's name and putting that in there and trying to link that as why I feel the way I do, I just didn't get that one. So I'll open it up for you all what you think about that.
Listen here. I'm gonna start with the original RG3 take, which was obviously he was talking about the rivalry that we spoke of earlier, and he was pointing out instances of where it appears that Angel Reese does not like Caitlin Clark, and some of her behaviors. I thought it was a good sports take and it was understandable, but this is a good instance of maybe correct message but wrong person. And call a spade a spade. Ryan Clark and RG3 don't like each other. So Ryan Clark saw that as a good opportunity to voice some of his opinions on RG3, which is why it went to speaking about his wife. As you said, that, him having a white wife should not invalidate his sports opinion. It didn't come off to me as hateful or, so far out of the park that, someone like Ryan Clark would have to speak on that and take it further while bringing his family in. I do understand where Ryan Clark came from. I personally have not been a fan of RG3 over the years because of some of his takes, but in no way, shape, or form did it warrant his wife being brought into it, because we are talking about sports. We are not talking about who someone is married to, who someone is laying up with at night on. I mean, I know it's not on ESPN, it's on your podcast, but your podcast is based on sports. So why are we talking about someone's wife? It did not make sense. On the flip side of that, the reason why, adding to the reasons why I dislike RG3 is because his response video to that was basically him attempting to get Ryan Clark fired. Excuse me. And that's why people feel the way that they do. He responded and played victim. Like, bro, you are a grown man. He didn't attack your kids. He really didn't even attack your wife. He attacked you. Whatever y'all got is personal between y'all, and if we gonna talk sports, keep it sports. So that's how I feel about the situation.
Before you jump in, Big John, I mean, and this is something else that came of it. And yes, I'm stirring the pot a little bit with this one, but the irony of it, of course, somebody pointed out that Ryan Clark's first child and daughter is biracial, by the way. I thought that was hilarious that because now you're putting your foot in your mouth. But go ahead, Big John.
No, I agree with what you said. He should have never brought his wife or his family in it to say that's why you don't understand the plight of the black woman or whatever. But my only thing is RG3. If you're going to say it's mainly about sports, some of the verbiage you're using isn't about sports. Calling Angel Reese ghetto, sassy, neck rolling, and all that, that's not sport. That's not sport. So if you want to keep it a buck, that's not sport. So saying that, you don't have to do that. And I don't want to say what I want to say, but you don't have to do that to feed into that other side to make it look okay.
He called her ghetto? I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Oh, I must have missed that part.
Yeah, he did.
But
so that's why I'm saying, so when you use those words as an analyst and you are a black man, what Ryan Clark should have stuck with was that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
That's not cool.
Did both cross the line?
Yeah, for sure. So
knowing that now, yeah, for sure.
So what I'm saying is they both had some points and they both were semi-wrong in their delivery. Because what I'm saying is RG3, you dealt with some of that being a black NFL quarterback. You tried to protect Lamar Jackson later on in your career from some of that. So why would you do that, some of that, to Angel Reese? I think that's what Ryan Clark was trying to say, and he should have stuck with that versus taking it to who he married.
Knowing who Ryan Clark...
It did. I'm sorry, Alex. It did look a little funny, though, with her being in the background. Kind of like, I ain't like that too much either. But go ahead. I just had to throw that out there.
Well, all I was going to say is knowing Ryan Clark, though, he wasn't going to deliver that message any different way. Like, he's going to be direct to the point. Like I said, he's going to speak, from the heart. I know there are certain people that, feel a certain way and feel like what he said may have even been true about RG3. And that, might be, your specific opinion, which you're entitled to. But it's one of those things, like you said, regardless of where he said it, Ryan Clark has a public persona and he works for Disney. And that's why I mentioned that at the beginning, that there are certain things that are looked at a certain way by the media and today's time that we live in. So it was just a no-win situation for either. And I do understand what you were saying, Kurt, about afterwards. I 100% agree and know why RG3 phrased stuff the way he did afterwards in his response. We know what it was. Like, he was trying to air Ryan Clark out,
He kind of go ahead.
He was trying to take advantage of the situation to make sure all the vitriol and response, was amplified. That was going to come back Ryan Clark's way, and I do believe that was part of it. Where it's like, if he gets fired, I'm going to add to the possibility, of that in his response. That was definitely part of it.
He sounded like he was trying to do his best Stephen A. Smith impression, where Stephen A. Smith, when he's like really hyper focused on the topic, he looks into the camera, he shakes his head. That was just uncalled. Like he just tried to fold that man. It was like, bro, that's
absolutely preposterous on every sense of the word. Yeah, that's
like he needed to be checked. I ain't know that ghetto part. Like, I'm glad Ryan Clark checked him, but even in the checking, don't bring up that man's wife, because that's a little under the belt to me.
Yeah, and like I said, I actually do respect both of them. I know some people don't like RG3. I thought
cornball brother.
I thought RG3, cornball or not, had a good take on where I want to go from here. Remember when the Bengals re-signed T. Higgins, over the offseason, and originally the criticism was, oh, the Bengals are cheap, they're not going to do it, they're going to find a way to weasel out of doing this and make an excuse. And then when they did it, you had people like Diana Rossini, who I absolutely despise and think is horrible at her job on ESPN, and I sick Bengals Nation on her back in the day in the playoffs when we beat the Tennessee Titans in the divisional round of the 22 playoffs, because she's one of them that I don't really believe, let me just say it, is well versed in her, job, and she has favorites that she, plays. I mean, a lot of us journalists do, but like we don't sometimes let that, particularly when we're trying to make an objective viewpoint on a game or a situation, take totally over. But she does. Like anything the Bengals do is wrong. And I segue to that, saying that she's one that says, "Oh well, okay, yeah, they resigned T. Higgins. Now how are they going to build the rest of the team?" Like RG3 had a take where he was like, "Y'all need to quit moving the goalpost on the Bengals. Like everything they do, y'all come up with another reason on why it was wrong or why they won't, be successful." And that's the thing. It was a no-win situation. If they didn't re-sign T. Higgins, people were going to say you're not building for a championship. You're not, keeping the pieces around Joe Burrow necessary for him to win. Now that they did do it, it's another excuse. Well, they won't have enough to build the defense or do anything else. Like, stop. Like, they can do no right in some people's, estimation. So I do respect RG3 for that take and being real about the Bengal bias that is out there, and we know as Cincinnatians is out there. Now, Kurt, before we get into that, and we're going to end with the Bengals talk, Kurt had hit me up the other day. He had a crazy dream that he and I were playing for the Dallas Cowboys. And he mentioned my cousin, who I've never met and mentioned that many times on here. He mentioned Micah Parsons. I'm going to try to finesse that this year. I don't know if it'll be successful or not, but I know he's got a social media presence, and I am in touch with the cousin that actually knows and interacts with Micah Parsons. So, that would be real dope if I can get him on here this year, which I'm going to try to do. But anyway, we were talking about the Bengals, me and Big John, off the record, because there's a lot of storylines that I want to get to as we close out. Just to touch on several. One, there are reports out, contrary to popular belief, that the Bengals have been trying to come up with some figures for a potential Trey Hendrickson extension. $28 million a year. I know he wants still $30+ million per year. I've said from jump that I just believe with his age at this point, the best that he would get out of me is a 2-year, $40 million contract. And if he didn't like it, I would have traded him during the draft and, tried to get a few more draft picks, especially as deep as the draft was with pass rushers this year. Not saying that you were going to get a Trey Hendrickson, but, sometimes it can be addition by subtraction. And if you have enough guys within the scheme, all willing to play their roles and good enough to do their job, sometimes you can kind of minimize the impact of losing one guy in particular, especially defensively. The Trey Hendrickson thing, he's saying he's not going to play, this year unless he gets, his extension and what he wants. Is there any scenario where you all, with him being 31, turning 32 this year, would offer him more than a 2 or 3 year contract and the $30 million per year that he's asking for? Now, keep in mind, before you answer, the statistics on guys over 30 who pull in double-digit sacks, it's not that great.
As a player, pay the man. He's earned it. He led the league in sacks, I don't know how many times. He's earned it. But as a businessman, like you said, not a good investment. I couldn't do it if I was a GM. I would try to work to get as close to that number as possible, or we can meet in the middle. But if we can't, then we're going to have to find somewhere for you to go.
I'm going to answer the question with a question. Is he as impactful as Aaron Donald?
For the Bengals, yes. Because at the time,
no, you're changing my question.
No, I'm not. I'm answering the question.
You said for the Bengals.
No, I said for the Bengals, meaning For the Bengals, yes, because they had no other pass rush last year but him, and he led the league. So for the Bengals, he is their Aaron Donald for right now. Now he's their impact player. So yes, he is. Now
Okay.
is he Aaron Donald? Of course not.
So let me break down my response a little bit better. Since you bring up a good point, even though for the Bengals and period are two different things.
It's a whole bunch of people
We got system. We got Trent Dilfer was a great quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens.
No, he was not.
My point is,
he went 6 weeks without scoring a touchdown. He was not a great quarterback for the Ravens.
I know what he's trying to say.
Are we going to see the same production from him over the next 2 or 3 years? If that answer is yes, like Aaron Donald, even his last few years out, he was a consistent monster going out the door. Do we see that from Trey? Do we think that's going to happen with Trey Henderson? Probably not. I don't think he's that caliber player. For the Bengals, yes, but overall, no.
3 years, no. I think he'll give you 2 double-digit sack years. He may not lead the league.
Then I'm sorry.
He'll give you 2. He won't give you 3. I doubt he'll give you 3.
I honestly, and this is not me being a homer at all or anything, I think he's got one more. I think he's got one more 8 to 12, 13 year. Sacks per year in him. And then after that, the value of what you would be paying him
Sam Hubbard
will not equal the money that you're paying him.
Exactly. So with that being said, I love him, and that's no disrespect to him, but the chances of him remaining as great as he was last year over the next few years, I would rather spread out that money throughout the defense because we need help at every position and move on. That's just a part of the business.
Especially in the defensive backfield where they've done absolutely nothing this offseason to address any of that, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
We're literally talking about lining up again with Dax Hill and DJ Turner. And as much as I like Cam Taylor-Britt, again, I still don't think that he's a CB1. I think he's a CB2 who plays good or overachieves a little bit when there's a solid guy on the other side of him. But when he is the guy that, defenses are targeting, you don't get the same production. Offenses are targeting, you don't get the same production out of him either.
He makes plays, though. I think he's still climbing. I still think he's getting better. He makes some real dodo plays, but he makes some really – he kind of reminds me of what's the guy that we had a couple years ago
I love this from Brother T.
Eli Apple.
Yeah, I have no loyalty. I have a lot of loyalty, but my loyalty ultimately is to the organization. Just like I feel that same way with, any team that I support, the Knicks, the Lakers, Ohio State, nobody is bigger than that Block O coach or player, same thing with the Bengals, ultimately, I am going to favor.
He's not a game changer.
I am going to favor the long-term approach. Now, don't get me wrong. I respect guys that spent their career here and are franchise legends, particularly guys that could have and should have left, the Geno Atkins, the, AJ Greens, Whitworth, obviously did, eventually lead the Leon Halls. I respect the Bengals players that for some reason Bengals Nation, don't. And I don't understand how anybody ain't, bowing at the feet of Corey Dillon with, the efforts that he put out on those garbage, teams, and they misconstrue certain comments or things or whatever. So I am loyal to the guys that are loyal to the city, the Carlos Dunlaps and stuff that didn't want to leave, but kind of forced out by this new, regime with Zach Taylor and not getting along with him. But at the end of the day, I look at it from a long-term, approach, and it's just being realistic in the same way the Bengals have to do themselves. It's not when it comes to these new contracts. Yeah, there are people like the Lakers that will pay Kobe Bryant based on what he did for them, knowing that he wasn't the same, player those last 2 years, but you still gave him the max contract just out of loyalty. The Yankees had similar negotiations with Derek Jeter. Like, we love you. You're all-time great, even for a franchise that's had all-time greats. but we're not paying you based on what you did. When we come up to the negotiation table and redoing these contracts, we still have to extrapolate and think about what you're going to give us going forward. It's nice, it's heartwarming. It pulls at your strings. Yeah, we want to reward this guy for what he's done. That's great when you're talking about a Jamar Chase or a T. Higgins that's still 25 or 26 years old and is still in the prime of their career when you are thinking long term. The Bengals have to be realistic. And again, what we're trying to, gauge is he going to give you that same productivity if he wants Trey Hendrickson is not just about the money. He wants at least a 3 or 4 year, contract at 31, almost 32 years old. Is he going to finish that contract? If so, still be playing at the same level? The odds are no. Can you get bit in the ass like the Andrew Whitworth situation? Yes. But how often does that happen? Like really?
Yeah.
And even he, while still productive, was not the same player that he was for the 11 years that he spent here. But he was able to finish out his career in a situation where there were other people around him and still be productive because he didn't have to be leaned on as the bell cow offensive lineman out there with LA.
And to me, there's a big difference when like Andrew Whitworth has been a Bengal for a long time. He's a part of that, organization forever versus Trey. He's been here for a few years. It is what it is.
Ted said Max Crosby, TJ Watt, and who is closest as edge rusher. Yeah, I'm glad you put that other one in there, brother Ted. Myles Garrett.
Michael Parsons.
Yeah, my cousin, who we just talked about, Michael Parsons.
I think, Kurt, you more arguing the numbers, and Alex, you're arguing the longevity of the contract. He's putting up the numbers. Like, he's not just coming out there and just not doing it. He's doing it.
He has, yes.
He has. He's led the league last year. He finished the past 2 years with multiple double-digit sack years. He's putting up the numbers. But business-wise, like Al said, it's not smart to do so. But he has done it. Like you said, we're not paying you for what you've done. We're paying you for what you can do for us in the future. But you can't deny what he's done. He's done it. Like,
keep in mind, a few years ago, he was the one that re-signed this current contract that he's under.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. Another thing, like, it's not like he's a free agent and we're negotiating or whatever. He still has 1 more year left on the deal that he just signed because he tried to pull this last year, a year after signing the deal, saying, I want to re-up it. I'm like, you just signed this 3 years ago. You signed a 2-year extension with 1 year left on the contract, which puts you under contract for 3 years.
Oh, he's definitely trying to get over. I mean, he's definitely trying to get over because he is giving the production. If he's trying to strike while the iron's hot, I led the league in sacks on a defense where if I didn't do that, we would be more than awful.
Guess what? They were still one of the worst defenses. So why not spread that money out?
Hold on. They were
players.
They were
the same thing.
They were, but in the words of Ice Cube, like it or not, I'm the best nigga you got. So that's why he's doing it.
He ain't wrong.
So that's what I'm saying. So that's why he's doing it. So like it or not, he is the best defense player you have right now.
Just don't give
and a more media friendly analogy, as he said on All About the Benjamins, a little less lip, a little more grit.
Right. Right.
I don't think either side is wrong. I'm highlighting looking at the Bengals long term, and obviously with the money that they just invested on the offensive side of the ball, they're going to have to be very strategic with what they do defensively and the money that they dole out, like Kurt said, and spreading it out because you do have more than one, issue at this point. Now, the defensive end that you drafted a few years ago that I said was a mistake in Myles Murphy out of Clemson, who's giving you absolutely nothing to this point, will have an opportunity to show what he can do now that Big Sam is retired. They just drafted a defensive end who me and Big John have talked about this many times. I've made clear what I thought about the pick. And I do believe the Bengals were slated and trying to draft Walter Nolan, who got picked one ahead of Shamar Stewart. I still have an issue if that was your number 2 prospect on the board, which I mean, I guess it was, but I find really hard to believe. But either way, um, I told Big John because we were out at his house, me and Nate, watching the first round of the draft. I said, man, I'm careful about judging guys' reactions when they get drafted because a lot can be misconstrued. You don't know how guys handle certain situations. Some people are overwhelmed with the situation and, finally achieving their life's goal or just thinking about the magnitude of it changing their lives, their families' lives. Some guys are more jacked up, energetic guys. Some guys are more reserved. Some guys could be pissed off because they thought that they should be drafted higher. But then there's this scenario where what Big John said, and I didn't disagree with him. It just really looked like Shamar Stewart did not want to be drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, yeah, he snapped in and he took a couple selfies with the Bengals fans over there at the draft in Green Bay. But and me being a communication, major and just having a natural skill for it in general, I study body language. They used to say that 85% of all communication was nonverbal. Well, in the times we live in now that are so not, personal, I'm sure that number has gone up with, digital communication and texting and everything else. Um, Even his introductory press conference when he got here, and again, it could just be how he is, but I didn't get that vibe. Then he decides to not participate in rookie minicamp. Now, many rookies will go ahead and get acclimated, do that. It's just shorts and helmets, so the possibility of you getting injured is like slim to none. Um, and it's more so about getting your head in the playbook, getting out there, running around for the vets. Get there, getting you acclimated to your new city. Most guys will go ahead and do that even before they sign their contract if they haven't already. He decided not to. So regardless of if he has a DVD in his hand or whatever they call them, Surface Pro or whatever, where he can keep up, with things, it's not the same as actually being out there on the field, going through those reps and being coached and doing it. So he's going to be behind anyway whenever he does step on the field. Reports were the reason he did that is because the Bengals offered him less than last year's number 17 pick. Whoever that is, and even me being the savant that I am, I don't remember, don't really care. It's another scenario where, like when you were on here last time, Kurt, and we were talking about Nico down there at the University of Tennessee and people being in his ear that probably aided that decision that he, made and ended up with him being where he's at. And I don't even know that this would have been an agent. It's just my opinion. I don't have anything to back this up. But, that somebody was in his ear and told him that's unacceptable. If I was you, I wouldn't, participate. And that's what he did. That's adding to all of this. Then we're talking about a guy that finished college with 6 sacks over 3 years, walking through the door like he's Reggie White or the second coming of Bruce Smith. You need all the reps you can get, brother. I was just totally turned off by it, and I usually side with the players, brother Tez, in most situations because I can still relate as a former athlete and being a football purist, but I understand the business and I understand the organization's side too. Big John, what was your take or opinion when you found out that Shamar Stewart was not participating in rookie minicamp?
I kind of said it a little bit more harshly than you because you get drafted in the first round, 17th pick. I'm not being a hater because, young man, you put the work in, you did something to make it there. But your production doesn't add up to where you got drafted, especially with guys before you that got drafted that they're critiquing every single thing about them and saying why they dropped or why they went so high. Your production doesn't add up to where you got drafted. So you're not signing. And I know it's a business part of it. You're not signing for whatever reason you're saying, but it just doesn't look right from your reaction from when you got drafted to how you're acting, your production. That whole recruiting class on your college team underachieved. You have a lot of quarterback hurries, and you are this supposedly athletic specimen, and your measurables are close to Myles Garrett. You're not Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett almost had 40 sacks in 2 years. You're not Myles Garrett. Let's get that straight. And the way you acting, if you don't sign, my guy, you don't come out and you don't get out the gates being a Hall of Famer, you may not play again. So you may want to figure this out. So I hope you can ball. I hope those measurables show up because it don't look right.
And I hate that excuse. Like I said last episode, we had more of a gap between that one and this one than I would have liked. But just things happen in life. I just go back to what Charles Barkley said when he said, "Oh, I got a bunch of quarterback hurries. I just didn't show up at sacks." What did Charles Barkley say? The operation was a success, but the patient died. Go ahead, brother Kurt.
The whole draft night situation, I shoot people bail for that. You know, even though I think you should be grateful being drafted to the NFL, you change your people's life, especially in the first round. But I do understand where you might felt like you might have went to a different team, or was hoping to go somewhere else. But with all this extra stuff, it kind of reminds me, and I'm upset with the Bengals. Maybe they don't do enough homework with drafting these guys. We had that situation with the rookie wide receiver last year. I can't think of his name right now, but who basically was feeling like he deserved more reps. Yeah.
Or excuse me, Jermaine Burton.
Yeah, where it's like you gotta earn your stripes. You gotta do something before you to miss rookie mini camps. Like, come on now, like you're not helping your own. You're not helping yourself. It's not a good look for you. It's not a good look for the team. And to be honest, like you said, if you don't come out the gate and make an impact, then good luck, good riddance.
Well, Jermaine Burton was a little bit different scenario though, because by all accounts he was, a first round talent. But the Bengals were warned like most people were warned. Some people took Jermaine Burton completely off the draft board. And while Nick Saban tries not to, denigrate obviously his own players and wouldn't have been beneficial for him as a head coach, he warned NFL teams about the unprofessionalism and the off-field behavior of Jermaine Burton. So the Bengals were well aware. That's why he fell to the third round, and they took a chance, on him. Very similar to another third round wide receiver previously in Bengals history that people might remember in the late great Chris Henry. Obvious first round talent, measurables and everything else. He lasted to the third round for very similar reasons as Jermaine Burton because of off-field behavior and things that had happened throughout his life. So you're always taking a chance if you draft a guy like that. But they've also hit on troubled guys in the past. Corey Dillon, Ocho Cinco mentioned that he had his own red flags coming out and why he lasted to the second round. Carlos Dunlap. I could go down the line on the guys we actually hit on, or even, he didn't last as long as he probably should have, but an undrafted free agent in Vontaze Burfict, who was taken completely off of teams' draft boards for obvious reasons, because as great as he was a nut job. Tez just mentioned another one, Joe Dean was a
Joe Mixon was definitely
pick,
one.
Because of what happened his freshman year at Oklahoma. And in today's time, he probably wouldn't even have been drafted. Bengals took a lot of heat for drafting him. I remember Channel 9 came to my job to speak to me because I wrote a rebuttal article about them basically condemning the Bengals for drafting Joe Mixon. And I, brought up what actually happened and my retort. So they wanted to come speak to me about that. So they've gotten lucky, and there have been other instances where we haven't been lucky. Odell Thurman, had a hellacious rookie year and never played again afterwards because of his off-field, struggle. So it can go either way.
But that's my problem. You absolutely right. And some of those players greater than others, like Joe Mixon was a steal. Um, but at the same time, it seems like that's always our draft strategy. We always are drafting high or these people who have troubled backgrounds, which I'm okay with because if we hit, we hit. It's good. It's football. But the same our injured players who have had a history of injuries, Tyler Eifert, and then we get them and they're hurt all the time. So it's like I'm just frustrated with how the Bengals draft. Period.
But also, it's a flip point of that of why he's not signing, saying they don't insure this and do that. But it's probably a reason why the Bengals don't, i.e., Kajana Carter getting hurt in the preseason and never being the same. Kenny Irons getting hurt and really never seeing the field. So that's probably why they don't. But you still
don't forget free agent signings like my man. Was it Antonio Bryant?
Yeah. So just stuff like that.
And they actually had to pay him an injury settlement. He never played a game.
Right. So it's like, Kajana Carter had the statistics in college, played good college football at Penn State, got here, freak accident, playing against the Lions. Even though he did end up going back to play, never was the same. Kenny Irons got hurt and never came back. So
Chris Perry,
Michigan ran him
into Michigan boy.
Even though he had,
I actually liked Chris Perry though.
Chris Perry had some good games. Yeah, that damn shovel pass. Chris Perry had some good games, man. But
look, Chris Perry had better hands than some wide receivers out of the backfield. He was, because we had this argument all the time, particularly me and Jeff. He'll never let this die. He thinks the Bengals should have drafted Steven Jackson that year instead of Chris Perry, and I still firmly and belligerently believe that Chris Perry was the right pick. He was the Doak Walker Award winner. He was the best running back in college football that year. He ran for 154 yards and 2 touchdowns on one of the greatest defenses in college football history. He was the right pick, especially when you had Rudy Johnson at the time as a downhill runner. He was the perfect complement. Just because, and I'll quote a teacher that I think all of us liked it as Schroeder and Mr. Flagg, when he said that just because you make a decision and it doesn't turn out the way that you want it doesn't always mean it was the wrong decision. It just didn't work out. And I believe, Chris Perry was one of those situations, mainly due to injury, on why it didn't work out. But I do believe he was the right, pick at the time. So it is luck of the draw. You're right. Kajana Carter, would have been a generational talent, and most players will still tell you that had he not gotten hurt. The Bengals gave up everything to trade up to the number 1 overall pick and draft him, and he gets hurt on his first damn carry of the preseason up in Detroit. I'll never forget it, But, that's the type of stuff that does set you back. Kurt has, some valid points on the overall draft strategy. Sometimes seems to see if we can get a bargain, and part of that is why they go after guys that have trouble backgrounds. Because, like you said, Joe Mixon was a steal. He doesn't slap that girl freshman year at Oklahoma. Joe Mixon is a first-round draft pick. We all know that. That's why he's still playing at a high level. Currently. So there is risk reward. Like I said, I just have a hard time believing that Shamar Stewart was your second prospect. They didn't even he said, I had no contact with the Bengals other than that preliminary meeting at the combine. They didn't bring him in for an in-person, workout. It didn't seem like that would have been the second person on your board if Walter Nolan's not available. And John, we talked about this. There were other proven pass rushers like a James Pierce from, Tennessee who did it at, a high level, had more than one pass rush move, which you're going to need to be successful in the NFL coming around that edge, which is one of the criticisms I had of Miles Murphy. I'm like, that one swim move ain't going to get it, bruh. Not against NFL offensive tackles. You have to have a plethora of moves or enough bend to you. Um, because I just feel like with pass rushers, you either have it or you don't as far as getting to the quarterback. Yes, defensive line coaches can, tweak things and coach you up at this level, but we're talking about the highest level. Like there has to be something already there that shows that they can extrapolate on. So we'll see how it works out, but I'm very concerned about the start to Mr. Stewart's tenure here in Cincinnati and what I perceive to be his overall attitude to being here right now. Now he could prove me wrong, and I hope he does, and goes on to contribute to this team. Nobody's obviously rooting against him. The last thing I want to talk about with the Bengals before we get out of here, um, negotiations for the stadium lease. I don't want to offend anybody because one of my best friends mom works with the county commissioner and his friends, with her. And all I'm going to say is there's a time to play hardball and there's a time to get real. And there is no situation where I see the city of Cincinnati thriving or benefiting from the Cincinnati Bengals leaving town. Because I, for one, am not going to stay in Cincinnati if that happens. I can just tell you all that. Like I will move, and it won't take long afterwards. I know everybody wants a fair deal from Hamilton County and the stadium and da 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 da. Da. Think that you can just survive off FC Cincinnati and them damn Reds that more or less ain't done nothing since 1990.
I
Think
hate,
that if you want.
I hate to see that happen. I'm not gonna say I'm gonna move, but I won't watch the NFL no more for sure. I'll be cool on it. I mean, unless they go to a cool city that I like, you know what I mean?
Nah, that ain't gonna do it for me.
I'm probably gonna be cool on them. I'm cool on it. I already really don't watch as much NFL as I used to because I'm more in support of my team and screw everybody else. You know what I mean? But if that were to happen, I hope it doesn't. But if that were to happen, I mean, I'll still watch the NFL, but not. It won't be as fun and exciting no more. Like I can't imagine being from Columbus, and I mean, we know the Ohio State University is up there, so they have that. But like,
That is their
being,
professional team.
yeah, but just being in a city without an NFL team, like what? That don't even sound like English to me. That's foreign.
It's that, and the Bengals do have such a big fan base, even outside of Cincinnati. It would be hard to replace that. Like it would be weird. I know other teams that have had big fan bases have left and have made it, but it would just be weird. Like I'm not a biggest fan as Alex is. I just don't want to live in a city without a football team. I just don't want to personally do that because that's boring to me. As much as I love football, I would want to do that anyway. Um,
Tailgating.
yeah, I would want to do that. So
They're gonna miss a lot of money if that happens. Now,
yeah,
I won't name any city council people by name or anything that have made comments in the past. Now, this was prior to Joe Burrow arriving, and John, I said this when Joe Burrow got here, even before I was a believer in him the way I am now, because of course, I'm the president of the Joe Burrow fan club now. But at the end of the day, I said that his career was going to determine the future of professional football in the city of Cincinnati. Full well knowing that this lease agreement was coming up in 2026. So I knew if he wasn't successful, there was going to be no shot. Now he came here and helped with Uno and a bunch of other people that have contributed to this run. T and a lot of other people and the guys on defense that we mentioned. Some guys that are no longer even here, the Jesse Bateses and DJ Readers and so forth, paved the way for there to be a practice bubble, down there on the river and other things. The city council did immediately agree to afterwards because again, what winning cures all, right? Um, At least we hope in this instance. My whole thing is if they don't get this done, they're going to realize how much the Bengals contributed to the city's economy and activities and everything else. And certain Cincinnati city council people have made the comment, oh, we'll let them leave. We'll keep our stadium and we'll get another team in here. No, you won't. No, you won't. If the NFL leaves Cincinnati, it ain't coming back. This ain't Houston. For that matter, it ain't Cleveland or other teams that, did lose it and come back. Ask St. Louis how that worked out. They won't come back to the city of Cincinnati if they leave. Just keep that in mind while everybody's playing hardball. And that's
They'll get
all
it.
I want to say on that.
They'll get it
Yeah,
done.
right now, ask Oakland. Oakland out here butt naked. They ain't got nobody. They ain't got the A's.
Oakland is embarrassing.
They ain't got the Raiders. You might as well say they ain't got Golden State, because Golden State is in San
They
Francisco.
don't have Golden State. They
Now
moved
it's still
across.
the Bay. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They
It's
moved
still
across
the
the
Bay,
bridge to a completely different city. First of all, you know how long it takes to get across the Golden Gate Bridge?
Yeah.
They lost the Warriors to San Francisco. Chase Arena, very beautiful facility. The Raiders, who, yes, they left before, but that was just, an hour or two away to LA, and then they came back to Oakland. They lost the Raiders to Las Vegas and then turned around and lost the A's to eventually going to Las Vegas also. They have nothing. Say what?
I didn't know that happened.
Yeah, that's why I said they out here butt naked. They ain't got nobody. They lost all three teams.
Yeah, the A's are playing in a minor league ballpark in Sacramento this year.
Wow.
It's going to be a few years before the stadium is finished in Vegas, but yeah, that's where they're headed also.
And like he said, St. Louis lost their team. Now St. Louis is surviving off the Cardinals and the hockey team and the Blues.
The Blues.
They don't have a football team. They ain't got a hoop team. They are literally surviving off MLB and hockey.
And they won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Greatest show on turf.
Yeah, they won the Super Bowl.
So it can happen to anybody.
Now, they have a recent history of winning in baseball. They have had a bunch of Cardinal teams that have been good. But yeah, they're surviving off MLB and hockey right now.
Oh, the Cardinals ain't going nowhere. Just like when people like, Mr. Castellini and all these people make these idle threats about the Reds, people will riot in Cincinnati over they Reds. Don't quite understand it unless you are from that big red machine era, in the 70s, but it just is what it is. So I think we're playing with fire. Ultimately, I'm hoping, like Kurt said, that they get it done. Kind of think they will. The reason I brought that up is because at the last moment, they changed lawyers or negotiators, speaking of Hamilton County, on who was negotiating the deal. And the Bengals were kind of thrown off by that because they just had another piece of legislation on the upgrades that went through, and they had an agreement, and they're like, oh, well, we're moving along, looking like we're going to finally, reach, the end of this thing. And then all of a sudden, we're going to change lawyers or representatives at the very end. And they're using the same lawyer or representative that is negotiating the Cleveland Browns fiasco right now, where they're moving off of Lake Erie and talking about moving into the suburbs and making it a dome stadium and everything that takes away from the advantage of the Cleveland Browns. So that's why the Bengals are worried and thrown off, like, wait, so you wait to the last minute as we're reaching an agreement to change lawyers and representations, Hamilton County. So hopefully it works out. That was basically everything that I wanted to touch on. I want to remind everybody that the audio files are available for each episode archived on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. Make sure you subscribe to all of those audio platforms. If you can't watch the live video, since Facebook deletes it every 30 days, it will only be on Facebook for 30 days. But all of our archive episodes are available on the Factual Opinions YouTube page. So please like, subscribe, share. I want to thank everybody who tuned in at any point in the episode. I want to thank my brother, the Brown Bruce Wayne, Big John,
Yes,
for
sir.
stopping through. You know, he Chicken George. He got 800 jobs and things he can be doing right now. I want to thank Cowboy Kurt, the originator of the Factual Opinions brand, for stopping through. Hat and all. Please check us out. We'll try and do it better the next time. Thanks for stopping through.
Yes, sir.